Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Duke Oishi.
In our show this time, we'll visit the Science Cafe and get to meet scientist Kim Binstead and learn about High Seas, an acronym for the Hawaii Space Exploration, Analog, and Simulation.
We'll hear about her work as principal investigator of the High Seas project and learn about its habitat on Mauna Loa, which simulates long-duration Mars missions here on Earth.
Kim Binstead is an academician with varied interests. She is a professor at the Information and Computer Science Department at UH Manoa. Her life work explores artificial intelligence, human-computer interfaces, and long-duration human space exploration.
Kim got her bachelor's in physics at McGill in 1991 and her PhD in artificial intelligence from the University of Edinburgh in 1996. Her thesis was on computational modeling and the generation of punning riddles. Her program, JAPE, Joke Analysis and Production Engine, generated puns such as, "What do you call a Martian who drinks beer? An alien."
Oh! She then went to Japan, where she conducted research on the Sony Computer Science Lab on human-computer interfaces.
She was chief scientist on the Mars 2007 long-duration mission, a 4-month Mars exploration analog on Devon Island in the Canadian High Arctic. In 2009, she spent her sabbatical as a scientist at the Canadian Space Agency, working on the agency's Planetary Analogues program.
We need to know who will explore Mars and how they will get along as an isolated group years away from Earth. We need to know what Mark Watney, Matt Damon in the Martian movie, would do if he were really stranded on Mars.
High Seas has been studying planetary explorers long before the Martian movie. High Seas is a NASA-funded research program operating long-duration planetary surface missions to investigate crew composition and cohesion.
Kim Binstead is the principal investigator of the High Seas missions over the next 3 years, which includes 4, 8, and 12-month simulated missions.
A crew of 6 selected from a pool of astronaut-like candidates monitored by an experienced mission support team performs exploration tasks such as geological fieldwork and life systems management isolated on the Mars-like northern flank of Mauna Loa, 8,200 feet above sea level.
The special conditions of the High Seas habitat, the mission profile, the delayed communications environment, and limited self-sufficiency are designed to be similar to those of a planetary surface exploration mission.
Daily routines include food preparation from only shelf-stable ingredients, exercise, scientific research, geological fieldwork carried out by humans or robots, equipment testing, and tracking resource utilization such as food, power, and water.
These routines support a suite of innovative behavioral and psychological tests and tasks performed by the crew. The behavioral research program is the core research performed at High Seas.
This research focuses on the need to identify psychological and social factors that can be used to assemble effective crews for long missions in space.
A team of approximately 40 volunteers from around the world serves as mission support, interacting with the crew through imposed one-way 20-minute communications latency to provide Mars-like mission constraints.
The crew of astronaut-like individuals and mission support started the first one-year mission to investigate crew composition and cohesion.
In 2014, ThinkTech did a video talk show with Kim Binstead on High Seas. We reached her by Skype at the habitat on Mauna Loa.
This is a 3D printed habitat. It was made there by the last crew. They have a 3D printer on site, and they took a CAD model and printed this out, and it gives you a good idea what it's like, and Kim is inside right now.
It's used for testing for the Mars trip, which is going to take place when?
Well, we never know. The Mars trip is always
then you better
a couple
hurry.
of decades off, right? But we need to be ready whenever there is one. So This is helping lay the groundwork.
Okay, and in this case, the habitat is to test on people. In this case, what were there, 6 people?
That's right.
Living together in the habitat for 4 months.
That's right.
Which is pretty onerous, I think. And finding out how to eat and sleep and breathe and get together and get along and do all the things that people would do in a confined space for 4 months. That ain't easy. You got to know each other real well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's very therapeutic in some ways.
That's right. And not only that, but there are 3 more missions planned. There's another 4-month mission followed by an 8 and then a 12-month mission. So these are going to ramp up and get even longer.
So the mission is to go to Mauna Kea, get inside the habitat,
right,
get all the supplies and what you need? I guess it's all self-contained?
Yes,
There's nobody delivering milk in the morning, is there?
Not every day. No, they do get some resupply because this is not meant to rigorously simulate every aspect of a mission. It's really meant to simulate the psychosocial aspects, so the crew behavior and dynamics, social interactions, that kind of thing. And so it's okay if you receive a shipment of food every once in a while. But they try to minimize that.
Like being on the mission itself. You have to pinch yourself to see that you're not on the mission. So Kim, can you give us a handle from your end? Where are you exactly? Where are you standing? Can you give us a sort of a quick walk around?
The habitat's actually on Mauna Loa at about 8,000 feet on a disused quarry. It's not on the Mauna Kea side for several reasons. One is that we needed the area to look very Mars-like, and this site on Mauna Loa is absolutely perfect. So let me walk you around. I'm going to turn the camera away from me so you can see what's going on.
Okay.
This is inside of the wall of the habitat. It's a geodesic dome, so you see the white material. It only has one little porthole, which you can see glowing in the background.
Mm-hmm.
There's a meeting area.
Mm-hmm.
There's the kitchen behind. The stairs up to the top level. Some exercise equipment. The area I'm standing in right now is a multi-use area, so it's used for work and for exercise and for relaxing. That is the door to the airlock to go outside. And just to back up a bit, we'll look upstairs. As you can see, it's a dome. And upstairs, you can see the very, very, very small bedrooms. They're absolutely tiny, really just big enough to sleep in.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you can't see around the corner is there's a small laboratory, but that's pretty much all there is to it. It's not a lot of space for 6 people.
How many square feet of space in the dome? Any idea?
It's about 1,000 square feet total.
It looks very neat. Is it always so neat?
Probably not when the crew's living in it, although they did a good job of keeping it clean. But right now everything's packed away, so there's not a lot of equipment lying about.
8,200 feet above sea level, on the desolate slopes of Mauna Loa on the Big Island, sits a geodesic dome, a remote habitat where the University of Hawaii at Manoa and Cornell University are performing groundbreaking research on long-duration space travel. The Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation Program, or HI-SEAS, reached a significant milestone on August 13, 2013, when 6 researchers emerged after being isolated in the habitat for 118 days.
It's been a great success, and it's paved the way for 3 more years of this kind of research. And NASA is thrilled with what we've done so far and is looking forward to get more.
After 4 months of being cut off from the rest of the world, the researchers enjoyed a breakfast of fresh fruits and other goodies.
It's so terrific. So juicy. Yeah, I love it.
The main focus of the first HI-SEAS mission was a food study. Meals cooked by the crew versus traditional pre-prepared astronaut meals, all while simulating the living and working experience of a real planetary mission.
Based on this study, we'll be able to offer a strategy that optimizes everything and that is a good balance between, on one hand, not wasting too much time preparing your food and not wasting too many resources, but on the other hand, keeping your crew fit and healthy.
You definitely need the ability to express yourself, to take away some of that boredom and menu fatigue, but you also want some of the efficiency that comes along with those days when you're really busy and you just want to make something quick.
The researchers also worked on a number of different projects, like exploring the local geological features in mock spacesuits and a study on antimicrobial t-shirts that could be worn for months. NASA has awarded $1.2 million to the HI-SEAS program to fund 3 more missions aimed at overcoming what the space agency calls red risks.
So these are problems that we need to solve before we can send people on long-duration space flights. And crew cohesion, how do you keep astronauts sane and happy and productive on a long-duration mission, is a red risk, and we're going to go a long way towards solving that.
A mission to Mars is the ultimate goal, a journey that would take just under 4 years. Thanks to the HI-SEAS program and the habitat built in partnership with the Pacific International Space Center for Exploration Systems, the University of Hawaii is on the forefront of space exploration research.
We've got all sorts of researchers knocking at our door to come and have their projects be run at this site. So it's a wonderful wonderful opportunity for the state and for the university.
It is also an amazing opportunity for UH students.
I thought it was pretty tremendous that I got to be involved with something so great, such as high seas, in my own backyard.
We have several UH students working on this project, and we will have them working on the project in the future, and maybe even going into the habitat as crew members in the future.
Planning for the next mission is underway as the crew members from the first mission adjust to life back on Earth.
I'm loving feeling the breeze against me and even the warmth of the sun on my face. It's just, that's nice.
Fast forward 2 years. The Honolulu Science Cafe, a function of the Hawaii Academy of Science, meets at a restaurant in Kaimuki to showcase talks by notable local scientists. Kim Binstead was a speaker at the February meeting, so we got to catch up on what she's been doing.
What is an analog? An analog is a place on Earth that is like a target environment, so like a place in space, in some interesting way. And there's a lot of different ways in which an analog can be similar to the target environment. For my purposes, the target environment is Mars, and so we're interested in Martian analogs for the purpose of this talk. So this is actually up on Devon Island in the Canadian High Arctic, and I spent 4 months there as a crew member on an analog mission as the chief scientist on that. And Devon Island is a really interesting analog geologically, but also psychologically, because it's very remote. It's not as remote as Mars, it's very cold, it's not as cold as Mars, but it does have some of those traits in common with it. So what do we use analogs for? One, we use them to discover problems we didn't know we had. Sometimes, and when you haven't yet integrated systems, when you haven't tested things over the long term, you don't really know what the problems are. So for example, how many of you have had a bad night's sleep? Ever? Okay. How many of you have had a week of poor sleep? How many of you have had a month of poor sleep? How many of you have had 4 months of poor sleep? Okay. So what happens is that your performance starts to degrade right away. Interestingly, your perception of your performance levels off. So you start to say to people, oh, I'm used to it. But I can promise you, your performance continues to drop off until around about 100 days, and then it falls off a cliff. And that's where you start to see really serious mistakes. And on the ISS and shuttle programs, well, more ISS obviously because it's longer term, there have been several near tragic incidents that are directly related to sleep deprivation. So that's one of those problems which you really only start to see the effects over these longer terms. So here's another analog. This is actually Mauna Kea. It's not far from the visitor center. And it's an analog in terms of the actual, so we were looking at a lunar regolith sample today. This area has a very Mars-like soil texture on the surface. So it's really good if you want to test out your rover tires, or if you want to test out a drill, for example. So NASA has regularly staged some tests there. And in this case, we were testing out some navigation tools. Oh, sorry, to back up for a second. I say we use analogs to design in the context of use. It's one of the rules of software engineering that if you want to get good software or good hardware, you need to not just sit in a little white room and think really hard. You want to send your design team to the place it's going to get used. So if you're doing a medical record software system, you send your team to a doctor's office and you see how the paper files are passed around, who touches them, who changes them, how are they used. For space, that's a problem because obviously the software engineers are not going to go to Mars before the astronauts, right? So how do we allow our teams to design in the context of use? Well, one way is to send them to analogs, and that way they can come to understand the problem in this visceral way and test their prototypes without actually having to go to Mars. And then finally, we use analogs to integrate systems. So this is an interesting analog. It is a Mars analog, even though it's underwater. And you might say, well, there aren't lakes on Mars. How does that work? Well, this is an operational analog. So what you have here, this is Pavilion Lake in Canada. And it's a very deep lake with some very interesting stuff on the bottom. So here we have an astronaut in a one-man submarine. He is actually an astronaut. This was a NASA-run study. We have an autonomous underwater vehicle over here, and we have a person in scuba gear over here. And they're roughly operationally equivalent to an astronaut in a rover, a independent rover, a robot, and an astronaut in a spacesuit. And they all have to work together in this really challenging, hazardous environment to carry out difficult scientific tasks under high pressure. So it's a really good operational environment. So again, this integration of systems, how do you make all the systems work together really well, is an important thing we use analogs for. This is the high seas, yay! This is the high seas habitat. It's at about 8,000 feet on the Mauna Loa side of the saddle area of the Big Island. And it is a very good physical analog. If it weren't for the lovely white clouds and the blue sky, this would look a lot like the images being sent back from Mount Sharp on Mars by the Curiosity rover. It is also a pretty good psychological analog in the sense the crews there are isolated and confined. Now, there is no analog on Earth that is perfect, almost by definition. We actually, oops, sorry. No, it's all good. It has Earth gravity, right? The air outside is perfectly breathable. And if the crew is endangered, we can get them to a hospital very quickly. So they don't have the sense of hazard that you would have on Mars or even in Antarctica. But in many ways, for the kinds of research we're doing, this is a really, really nice analog. And one of the ways in which it's very useful is because the Hawaii seasons are not all that different from each other. We can have crews in there for very long durations, and that's our specialty.
Want to know more about Kim Binstead or High Seas? Check it out in detail on highseas.org. There's plenty to learn about life on Mars and the thrills and chills of long-duration space travel. Mark Watney would be proud.
We're delighted that the Hawaii Academy of Science presents these talks. Its next meeting on March 15th will be at JJ Bistro and will feature Eugene Magnier of the Institute for Astronomy at UH Manoa in a discussion about the Pan-STARRS survey.
If you want to know more about the Science Cafe, check out its website, highside.org. And don't forget the Academy's Science Fair coming soon at the Convention Center this spring. See hawaiiacademyofscience.org.
And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech Hawaii broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from noon to 5 p.m. on weekday afternoons. And then we broadcast our earlier shows all night long. And some people listen to them all night long. If you missed a show or you want to replay or share any of our shows, they're all archived on demand on thinktechhawaii.com and YouTube. For our audio stream, go to thinktechhawaii.com/radio.
Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our weekly calendar and our live stream and YouTube links, or better yet, sign on to our email list and get the daily docket of our upcoming shows.
ThinkTech has a high-tech video studio at Pioneer Plaza. We invite you to come down, see our studio, be part of our live audience. Contact me, Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. Be a part of our civic engagement and raise your awareness on ThinkTech.
Go ahead, give us a thumbs up on YouTube or send us a tweet at ThinkTechHI. We want to know what you're thinking and how you feel about current issues and events affecting Hawaii. We want you to stay in touch with us, and we want to stay in touch with you. Let's think together. On March 17th, ThinkTech, in conjunction with a Grassroots Institute, will present a Downtown Forum luncheon panel to explore ways by which the native Hawaiian community can reach its cultural, social, and economic goals other than by political sovereignty. Our program is called Beyond Political Sovereignty, Pathways for Hawaiian Advancement.
Join us and raise your awareness about the critical changes affecting and taking place in Hawaii. Be a part of the conversation and sign up to attend on thinktechhawaii.com.
Want to speak out about a community issue or event? ThinkTech invites you to come down to our studio and make a video at our Speakers Corner. If you'd like to express yourself, contact Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. And now, here's this week's ThinkTech commentary.
A few days ago, Senator Laura Thielen and Senator Russell Ruderman came to our studios and did a Community Matters talk show on the voter initiative and term limits bills pending in the 2016 legislature. These bills certainly seem to be great ideas. They give the public a greater opportunity to participate in the legislative process. If you hadn't noticed, many people are disaffected with what they perceive to be a lack of grassroots access to the legislative process, both in state and federal governments. They feel legislative prerogative is the domain mostly of lobbyists, power brokers, and big contributors. Voter initiative allows a petition signed by some 35,000 people, that is 10% of the number of those who voted in the last election, to put a bill on the ballot for the electorate to vote on in the next general election. This allows ideas that the legislature would not otherwise entertain to be made into law. Under the bill, 5 years after the law is passed, the legislature can repeal it. That's reasonable. It gives the bill adopted through voter initiative room to breathe for a few years before the legislature can undo it. The 21st century is a century of social media and calls for transparency. It is also a time in which legislation may not accurately respond to the will of the community. Voter initiative doesn't completely solve that problem, but it does go in that direction and is worthy of our consideration. Indeed, our counties in Hawaii have voter initiative, and many Western states have adopted it. Senators Thielen and Ruderman feel that voter initiative would change the way things work, that if the public could adopt legislation this way, it is likely to make the legislature more responsive somehow and would change the way people see government and the way government sees the people. Their term limits bill is out of the same box. It would limit the number of years a state legislator could serve to 12 consecutive years and would avoid professional political careers in the legislature. Wouldn't we rather have comings and goings, fresh faces and ideas every so often? Voter initiative and term limits usually go hand in hand on the mainland, and Senators Thielen and Ruderman feel they should go hand in hand in Hawaii. We haven't had a constitutional convention in Hawaii since 1978. Some people would prefer not to have one, since the changes coming out of a constitutional convention could be at least a little disruptive. Others would like to see changes and want the new ideas that come out of a constitutional convention. When I asked Senators Thielen and Ruderman whether we could have all three, that is, voter initiative, term limits, and also a constitutional convention, they said we should welcome all these avenues for change, either separately or together. These bills offer the possibility of new vitality in government and our community, and the prospect of bringing the people and government closer together to deal with the challenges of the 21st century. Kudos to Senators Thielen and Ruderman for starting the conversation. If you have any views on these bills, express yourself. Come to our Speaker's Corner or write to your legislators. Let's all get involved. Let's make a new and better Hawaii.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Okay, Duke, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Duke does. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or a volunteer, a producer or an intern, and help us reach and have an impact on Hawaii.
Thanks so much for joining us and being part of our ThinkTech family, and for supporting our open discussion of tech, energy, diversification, and globalism in Hawaii. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Duke Oishi. Aloha, everyone.
Out, out.